Well, Molly, she loves to travel, and she was busy, actually. This was a couple of weeks ago that you went to Haiti on a 48-hour expedition.
Yeah, it was super fast, John, and like, oh man, we spent more time on the airplane than we actually did on the ground. It was 48 hours, the fastest my producer and I have ever worked, I'm sure. It was crazy. Got to travel with 18 Canadians.
That's incredible. So in Haiti, though, what was it like when you got there? Were you concerned at all for your safety? Because you guys kind of had to get in and out and get your footage and your story and then leave really quick.
Yeah, I think the difference, I guess, with just journalists and traveling with a group is that you're responsible for the safety of all these people. So of course, security detail following us everywhere, armed guards with us everywhere. You can't stay in one place for a long time because you draw attention. So much to think about. But this is part one of my series, which is going to be going on throughout the week here. It is called Strength in Numbers.
A 7.0 quake may have rattled the Isle of Hispaniola, but it's the conscientious aftershock that woke up the world. January 12th, 2010 lives on in infamy. Disaster, destruction, and death everywhere. 200,000 killed, another 300,000 injured. Those numbers cut deep in a population of just 10 million. Experts call this quake the worst natural disaster in Western Hemisphere history. Still, amidst the rubble, a global response like never before.
Twitter.com/yclef.
Millions of dollars poured in via text message. Social media showed its strength. I can see your halo. Musicians flexed their muscles, and governments like Canada fast-tracked immigration and sped up pre-existing adoptions. A small island nation soon became the epicenter of the world.
The massive earthquake in Haiti completely destroyed the country's communication systems.
Port-au-Prince, in the immediate aftermath, people obviously terrified.
A huge challenge.
But even the most catastrophic and captivating struggles fade from the spotlight.
He's been in Haiti for days.
More than 2.5 years later, the view on the ground is shifting. The international airport has been built back up. Foreign travelers continue to flood in. Among them, 18 Canadians adding to the relief effort. At its helm, a 27-year-old Ottawa man. Steve Martel has made millions buying up real estate in the U.S. Now he's formed the Martel Alliance Foundation.
Oh, cool. They have the same last name as me.
He's teamed up with a registered NGO on the ground.
Scott from Hope to Haiti.
To pay forward his good fortune.
Give us an idea of what our day's going to look like.
Yeah, I met Steve February this past year. A group of businessmen came over to tour some villages, and he really caught the passion to, I can do this also. And so they reached out to me and said, you know, we want to do a village, and can you do it for us? Like most everything else in Haiti, we had never done that before, but I mean, if we have the funding, we can figure it out.
That funding comes from people on this trip. All students of the Martel Alliance, the first U.S. property they buy, turns into a home in the developing world. They hail from the prairies, Atlantic and Central Canada, many meeting for the first time. It's a long way from Emerald Park, Saskatchewan for Kathy Bosch. It's also her first time in the third world.
I'm a registered nurse, and I've worked up in northern Saskatchewan. I was actually working when the earthquake hit down here 2.5 years ago. And I had really wanted to come at that time to help out. I never did make it down, unfortunately. And I had an opportunity now with Steve Martel and this Hope for Haiti. So I am overwhelmed, actually.
Makeshift shelters still litter the highway. 400,000 Haitians are still living in tents. A shocking reality and a formidable challenge for Canadians who already invest in housing.
6:46 this morning, we continue our Strength in Numbers series in Haiti. Now, yesterday, you had landed in Haiti.
Just got there.
Got to the capital. What was the capital like?
You know, a lot of it has been cleaned up. 60% of the debris has been moved aside in terms of getting around the capital, so that was good. But we didn't really spend that much time there. We literally got on the road because we had a 10-hour trip to get out to this village project that they were building.
It took 10 hours to get to the village you need to get to?
It was fun driving on those Haiti roads.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but before we got there, of course, we were there for 48 hours. So the first day we actually took a little detour. So here's part 2 where you see where we went to.
It's a long way from the care and comfort of Canada. Few rules, rickety infrastructure, uncertainty around many corners. Still, it's a massive improvement from the days following the quake.
2.5 years later, construction continues. Now, the estimated 300,000 buildings that were destroyed or leveled during the quake are slowly being built back up. That reconstruction is driving Haiti's national economy.
Cassandra Mino notices a difference. The Ottawa native has been in and out of Haiti since 2004.
A lot less garbage. They've been able to maintain the streets quite a bit.
She's carrying fragile cargo on this journey, but it's not the first time.
I was coming off of a sailing trip with my husband when I came down in 05, and it was actually a Haitian who told me that I was pregnant before I even knew. I hadn't even missed my period.
That bundle of joy is now 7, embarking on his first adventure here. He's not the only child.
What are we doing here?
We're off-roading here.
We're off-roading?
4-year-old Jacob is here too, with his father, Martel Alliance founder Steve Martel.
I don't think it's settled in yet what's going on, and I think it's going to take a few years and a few times for him to come back to really realize what's going on outside of North America.
Looking out the window is one thing, meeting children the same age quite another. Our first stop, Gonaives, a village 150 kilometers north of Port-au-Prince. And even outside the capital, away from the earthquake's immediate reach, a trail of innocent victims.
Orphans from
the quake, yeah. I mean, there's probably hundreds more in this area. But we've had water here at our school, and so they were kind of directed here.
This is what the building looked like in 2008. With Hope to Haiti's help, here's what it looks like now. It houses, feeds, and pays for 25 orphans to go to school.
How old are you?
10 years old. Scott, you really get to know a lot of these kids. I mean, you're coming in and out all the time. What is that like, I guess, with the relationship with the kids?
You know, it's just a lot of these kids are still traumatized from what's happened to them, and they warm up to me eventually, but sometimes in groups they'll really just kind of pull back. This is one of the sweetest boys here, always one of the first ones to greet me. And again, and most of them call me Poppy, or Father, which is just too much.
Breaks your heart a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Because of organizations like this, Haiti is now commonly called the Republic of NGOs. Now, no one really knows how many are operating. Estimates range between 3,000 and 10,000.
We didn't have a roof over here.
Simple gifts provide shelter.
It was Mr. Steve and his friends that made that possible.
C'est Monsieur Steve.
Others, pure joy. Edmontonian Dennis Hybrick suggested bringing over school supplies. Basics in the Western world, luxuries here. That smile says it all, and it stretches across borders. Canadian kids with the same wide-eyed glow as they share with classmates across the globe.
Because I know, yes, I know what I do to you. That's why I hope I live in just because we live.
Strength in Numbers. This is a 5-part series that we've been featuring this week on CTV Morning Live. Molly went to Haiti, and I have a question. Why did you pick the name Strength in Numbers for this feature?
I actually saw it on the Haitian national flag. It's the model that comes out on the flag, and it's actually in French. It's called L'Union fait de la force. And the whole point of it is, you know, saying that we're stronger together. And I think that's a perfect depiction of this country. You think of the earthquake, you think of the ravaged areas and how the world came to the response. And just in the last couple of subsequent years, perhaps how the world is not coming to the response or hasn't been there. So this is part 3 of my series, and we look at how Canada is helping out.
Because I know, yes, I know.
The voices may grab your attention, but it's the smiles that keep you fixated. Children so joyful amidst unimaginable grief. Yay! Each one an orphan after the earthquake. Though Steve Martel would never compare the two, he had his own challenges. He was diagnosed at 16 with brain cancer.
I was in my ward when I was getting treated for cancer, and this man came in and gave us a bunch of Nintendo 64s at the time. And I remember that that was the one thing that took my mind completely off of cancer.
That anonymous stranger has inspired Martel to leave his Canadian comfort zone. This is his 2nd time in Haiti.
And I've been through a lot in my life, but to be able to build a home for someone, to house them, was the biggest feeling I could ever do. I mean, just to have a roof over your head. We take it for granted.
400,000 here wished they had a roof over their heads. This is fewer than the 1.5 million following the quake. International aid an obvious game changer, but it just hasn't been enough.
Recently, the president of Haiti addressed the media at the UN General Assembly. He said only half of the $5.3 billion that the world and countries around the world have pledged has actually come into this country.
The government of Canada says it's on track to donate $1 billion, but keep in mind that's a total from the past 6 years. This year's focus is two-pronged: recovery and reconstruction, and the Haiti earthquake relief. But critics, including former Governor General Michael Jean, say most of the money is bypassing the Haitian government, Haitian companies, and Haitian NGOs. This say in spending is often left up to each country's NGOs, which some fear may not be sustainable in the long run. And that international relief is needed more than ever. You have to remember that Haiti has been hit by more than just a quake. At the end of 2010, a crippling cholera outbreak. More than 6,000 people dead, another 500,000 sick. And in August of this year, Hurricane Isaac ravaged the country with mudslides, trees uprooted, tents shredded, the homeless in the capital, victims again. Mother Nature's wrath is not as physically evident now, but poverty peaks around every corner. Today, over half the population, that's 5 million, live on less than $1 a day. 80% of the people here under $2. A rocky road to recovery, which only gets worse when you live in the middle of nowhere.
It's an amazing country because they just continue to get knocked down, and just in a matter of days, they're dusting themselves off and getting on with life.
.646, we continue this morning with our special feature, Strength in Numbers from Haiti. Molly, you traveled there. Now, it's a third world country. It's got some very hard hit areas, but you went to the rural areas that were really devastated.
Yes, in this feature, you know, we're going out into like really, really rural areas. We were 8 hours one day in a vehicle, 8. Craziness.
That's incredible.
Yes, and it's not like roads like here. We're not thinking about driving down the highway number 1 here.
You need like a Jeep to get where you're going,
You
right?
do. We had like this bus and we were up and moving around. It's a bumpy ride. Take a look. Part 4 of Strength in Numbers.
It's a view that's sure to catch your breath. Majestic mountains, luscious greenery, and a never-ending blue skyline. At first glance, you wouldn't know you're in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
I come from a coastal area. I know what it looks like, and but it is beautiful. It's beautiful along here.
A lot of the stuff that you see in the news isn't what the country actually looks like, and so the beautiful landscape in any developing country, in any country, often isn't portrayed, and so it's great to actually be able to be a part of it and see it.
This natural beauty shouldn't really be a surprise. Keep in mind that Haiti is right next door to the Dominican Republic, on the same island, in fact. Unlike its poor sister, the Dominican is expected to rake in $5 billion from tourism in 2012 alone.
If the government can remain stable, and right now I think there's a stable administration in place, long enough that people will come and invest resources to build infrastructure for tourism, I think they have an opportunity, but I think that window is about 4 years.
But would that investment come here? Locals say aid flows into the capital and rarely trickles much farther. It's for that reason that many on the roadside question if we're even going the right way. They can't believe foreigners are interested in places barely drivable by car.
Just left Ghana. We're on our way to Anse Rouge. Of course, that's where the village project is, and it's quite a bumpy, crazy ride on our way up there. It's only 80 kilometers, but it's going to take us at least 3 hours.
These are the forgotten trails that often lead to a forgotten people.
50,000 kids a year starve to death in Haiti. And that could be, we could solve that problem. But Haiti has no resources to exploit. There's no oil here, there's no diamonds here, there's no gold. And they're just forgotten.
I was in remote areas of Belize as well.
Oh man.
Some of the houses are shacks, but not quite as the type of shacks as they have here with the sheet metal and scavenged bits of wood.
The small houses, just the conditions they live in, we just don't know how good we have it.
After 8 hours on the road, the disparity comes to life in Anse Rouge. Unlike the first orphanage, this one has no outside help. 2 basic rooms here house 37 orphans.
The kids get 1 meal 3 days a week.
1 meal 3 days a week.
Yeah.
There's even children outside.
So parents just came and dropped.
This one is constantly sick. His family thinks he is cursed, so they abandoned him. In a country where voodoo is the traditional religion, it's too big of a risk to put him near other children as well.
2 weeks?
This has been sick.
And is there any doctor that will see him?
This is everyday life in Anse Rouge, Haiti. 10,000 people shut away from the world until a busload of Canadians makes an investment.
.646, and we're talking about strength in numbers. This is a feature we've been showcasing this week here on the show. It's regards Haiti, and now you travel with a bunch of social entrepreneurs. Now, what exactly does that mean? Who are these people?
Yeah, that's what they call themselves, and I didn't know what that meant either. But basically, this group has come together because they're Canadians that have learned how to buy up real estate in the U.S. So they're definitely making a profit, learning from each other. However, they thought, we have a social responsibility in that. If we're, making money, we should give back in some way. And so they call themselves social entrepreneurs as they've started this Martel Alliance. Really interesting, but we finally, after that 10-hour crazy ride.
Yeah, and the ride itself was almost adventure, right?
It was an adventure in its own.
Wow.
So this is the finale. We finally reached that Martel Alliance Village project, the finale of Strength in Numbers.
This is awesome.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's mind-blowing.
It's quite incredible. 31 houses built from the ground up in just 2 months.
Yeah, these men here are part of our construction team. We've got about 60 guys working on this project, non-stop.
Non-stop because there's 10 more houses under construction. That pace should increase. Every time a Martel Alliance student buys their first U.S. property, a house is built in the developing world in their honor.
Est-ce qu'on peut rentrer? Est-ce qu'on peut regarder? Excellent. And this is really cool because theoretically these are built as 2-bedroom homes. And to us, it seems like it's almost nothing. But to them, this is a roof over their heads. So essentially, this is the biggest thing that they've ever seen and they're used to.
After the earthquake, there was an influx of children without parents. A lot of families came back here to Orphans City. So you suddenly had 10 families to a house.
This project is trying to spread those people out. Now, no one lives here yet, but when complete, the pastor will make the final call, divvying up property to the poorest. Until then, community members come here every day. Many are employed to build or to cook. Others come on their own to help out.
One of the major issues that they're having is water. And to run a bathroom, you need water.
The closest well is 1,000 yards, so they rely on buckets. The challenge is to get a water filtration system in place. Until then, the backyard washrooms will release naturally.
So all family members sleep in the same room? That's very normal.
Very normal.
Because of the distance from the capital, houses cost about 4,000 Canadian. That price includes labor and materials.
Planned on 40 houses, expanding out to 80 houses is going to be the hope.
But this is just phase 1. Phase 2 is all about sustainability. A community center and a fishing depot are next to create jobs.
The village faces, this beautiful waterfront that's behind us, and if this was any other country in the world, it really would be primetime beach resort, but here in Haiti, it's one of the poorest areas of the country.
So the group wants to use the beautiful ocean view to propel tourism. Enter phase 3.
Teach the local people, instead of killing sharks, dolphins, whales, to build an eco-friendly ecosystem and an ecotourism. So instead, to get local people or people from around the world to come here.
That dream may take a few years, but this start gives the community hope.
Praise God that a team of people saw the potential and decided to invest. I'm working day and night with the help of God to make sure I deliver and make sure this money is put to good use.
Undoubtedly, the Canadian financial contribution will make a lasting difference. But perhaps it's a Canadian connection. Those hugs, handshakes, smiles.
Un gros sourire. Cheese.
That strength in numbers that is most cherished. Reporting from Anse Rouge, 400 kilometers northwest of the Haitian capital, I'm Molly Thomas.